microphone on, I think. Excellent. Right, I'll start again. Welcome to the Cavendish Building and the University of Derby. Many thanks to Kath Mitchell and the University for hosting us today. It's great to be here in Derby, of course. This is actually the 15th meeting of the EMCCA board. And as I look around the table, not all of you have been here for all 15, but I have. And I will do my utmost to maintain that record as we go forward. But you are all welcome. And today, of course, we've got some recommendations for decision. Usual arrangements apply. We try to reach consensus wherever we possibly can. But we do, as you know, have formal voting arrangements in place. And all members around the table, whether they have votes or not, are encouraged and entitled to speak. Just a reminder that this is being live streamed, so your attendance is accepting that you may appear on it. And a reminder to do what I didn't do at the beginning, which is switch your microphone on when you are due to speak and then switch it off when you are finished. I'm not aware of any fire alarms planned, but obviously should there be one, emergency exits will be pointed out to you. And of course we're seeking to get through this business as swiftly and as efficiently as possible. So if I start with 2 points first of all, which is before we move on to apologies, I'd like to start by welcoming new members around the board, and there have been some changes of deputy leaders within our constituent councils. So to welcome Councillor Shiraz Khan from Derby, Councillor Dawn Justice from Nottinghamshire, and Councillor Stephen Reid from Derbyshire. Councillor Graves has given his apologies today and has been substituted by Councillor Paul Parkin, and you are all welcome. And I hope that you enjoy this meeting. It will be one of the better ones that sometimes you attend. So those are all the apologies that I've received. At this stage, as I say, a couple of members are just parking up and running a bit late. Councillor Peatfield.
I just wanted to offer apologies for Sam Dennis, as she's unwell today.
Yes, okay, that's your Chief Executive. Thank you very much. Can I move then to declarations of interest? Do we have any? Councillor Reid.
Just with item 10, in the receipt of Transport Investment Plan, just obviously we're going to be into receipt of some of that. So,
yeah, you don't have to declare any of that because that's okay because every single authority, constituent authority around the table, will be receiving funding, and that's not something you need to worry about, just in case anybody else is thinking about that. Yes, Councillor Adams. I forgot you, of course, are substituting today for
Julie Lee.
For Julie Lee.
That was it.
That's it. My apologies. Yes, I'm so used to seeing you. Councillor Adams, that other things that I had forgotten momentarily. Apologies. Right. Moving on then to public participation. Now we have a number of questions, public questions, but I believe only 2 members of the public are in the room today to ask their questions. Those that aren't here to ask questions, the answers to their questions will be published on our website at some point this week. But can I start by asking David Reid to come forward to the desk and to ask your question, please?
All right. The NPPF now advocates a vision-led approach to transport planning, and the SPD for the Towton Chetwynd development envisages unparalleled connectivity through new walking and cycling links. Unfortunately, the assumptions on which the 2021 LC WIPS plans for cycling and walking infrastructure for the Towton Chetwynd catchment were made which should have provided the connectivity, are no longer valid. HS2 Limited will not now deliver the various things that they said they would deliver. Although the 2021 LC WIP envisages TCF-funded Derby to Nottingham cycle routes via the development, Nottinghamshire County Council cancelled the project. Although the 2021 LC WIP envisaged cycling and walking connectivity between Long Eaton and Stapleford and the development by towns deal funding, those towns deployed their funding elsewhere. A developer is now agitating for permission to build houses according to master plans that would create ransom strips between the development and Bessel Lane and between the Chetwynd area and the rest of the development. Without a timely revised plan for the cycling and walking infrastructure for the catchment, there will be nothing tangible that the planning authority can cite as grounds for refusing the application. How is it best for timely revised plans for the cycling and walking infrastructure for the catchment to be produced? By EMCCA updating the parts of the LC WIP that apply to the catchment, or by Broxtowe Borough Council commissioning an active travel study using LC WIP methodology to inform the District Council on planning policy for the catchment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Reid. And whilst there are aspects that have changed since its publication, the D2N2 LC WIP is the current walking and cycling plan in place. Active travel links to the proposed Toton development are already identified as part of the D2N2 LC WIP strategic cycling network, and therefore Nottinghamshire County Council will expect these to be considered by Broxtowe as the local planning authority as part of the development proposals. I understand that Broxtowe Borough Council will shortly be undertaking work to prepare a new local plan, which will include consideration of how active travel opportunities can be enhanced and integrated into new developments. You have a supplementary?
Yes. The Toton and Chetwynd situation seems like a particular case of a more general problem, namely that the current D2N2 LC WIP doesn't systematically incorporate plans for active travel infrastructure for the catchments of known upcoming major developments. For example, if you consider the Freeport sites, the current LC WIP doesn't treat Radcliffe-on-Soar as a future active travel trip destination from trip origins north of the Trent, and doesn't treat EMIP as a trip destination from anywhere at all. It doesn't seem to treat the Stanton Ironworks redevelopment site as a trip destination either, even though it will have 4,000 or something employees who will need to get to work somehow. Shouldn't our local authorities organise themselves to do what the DFT's technical guidance says that local authorities should do, namely treat future development sites as active travel trip destinations and update LC WIPs when there are major new development sites?
Thank you for that supplementary. We will in due course be reviewing and updating the LC WIP, and I'm sure the comments that you have made and the representations that you have raised will be considered as part of that when we get round to doing the review of the LC WIP.
Okay.
Thank you. Can I invite Richard Armitage to come and ask his question?
Good morning. My name is Richard Armitage. I'm from Glossop. Derbyshire County Council's proposed closure of Glossop HWRC, or Household Waste and Recycling Centre, would result in at least 1 million additional car miles on the road linking Glossop to the nearest alternative HWRC at Water Swallows in Buxton. This additional mileage contradicts EMCCA's transport strategy by increasing car use needlessly and by making an essential service even further out of reach for households like those in Gamesley, in Glossop, with very little access to a car. Will EMCCA oppose the proposal to close Glossop HWRC?
Thank you, Mr Armitage, for your question, and I recognise that any consideration of closure of important local assets like household waste and recycling centres are difficult, and making changes to the availability of services may result in people having to travel further, and this in turn may have other impacts, as you have outlined. But operating household waste and recycling centres is not a mayoral responsibility, so I really do need to encourage you to engage with Derbyshire County Council on this matter, and the Council is currently running a 12-week consultation to gather the views of residents, and the full details of which can be found on their website, Glossop Recycling, and I would encourage yourself and all members of the public with those concerns to make those views known to Derbyshire County Council. Do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, please.
Okay.
The short version isn't the closure of Glossop Tip a strategic issue for you as a mayor? If I may explain, you are going to want to have waste infrastructure in place if you're going to encourage development in High Peak. And my understanding of your remit at EMCCA is it covers transport, climate and nature, public health, strategic planning, and I wish to understand how an action like the closure of Glossop Tip will adversely affect your ability to deliver on such important aspects of local government. If I very quickly give you some examples, I think the impacts will be unreliable bus journeys as congestion will increase on those roads, the 61 for instance. I think air pollution from millions of more car miles will be generated. I think there'll be more road collisions leading to less walking and cycling. I think there'll be poor road infrastructure needed to be used to get to alternative tips. So we would have to use Snake Pass to get to Chesterfield, for example. And in Glossop, half of households in Gamesley have no access to a car. So it will really stretch your neighbour's goodwill to ask them to drive 30 miles to take your stuff to the tip. And then there's the visitor economy. I think fly tipping in the Peak District would, I think, which I understand is one of your 7 big growth areas, would be bad for the visitor economy, create wildfire risk, and it's increased public health. So I think you understand you've got a spatial development strategy, and it's got to set out, in addition to housing, the type, extent, and broad location of strategic infrastructure needed to enable development and serve existing communities, including transport, social and waste infrastructure. Is there in the MPPF?
Thank you very much. And if I ruled the world, it would be really quite different, at least if I ruled the world here in the East Midlands region. But I don't have powers for everything. And therefore, local authorities have to make their own decisions and be held accountable for their own decisions, in the same way that when I make a decision, I take responsibility and am held accountable for that. And whilst there can be representations made on those bigger, broader issues that you have raised, Mr Armitage, ultimately this is a legal responsibility of Derbyshire County Council, and I'm sure that they will have heard the points that you have raised. I'm very sure that they will have. I do encourage you, though, to make sure that you are submitting those views into Derbyshire County Council so that they are able to take a decision based on all of the factors and the risk factors, particularly as you point out around fly tipping or increased fly tipping. But I ultimately do not have responsibility and cannot tell those local authorities what they can and they cannot do, because they are legally responsible and accountable.
Thank you. If you want to know more, there's a public meeting on Monday night next week.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, thank you for that. Can I move then on to the minutes of the previous meeting? Are you happy that those are a true record? Everyone's happy? Yep. Thank you very much. Move on then, one moment, to the mayoral update. I'll just have to... There we are. So, as I say, this is the 15th board meeting, but it's actually some months since we last met as a board, officially, since March. So I've got a bit of a bumper issue of a mayoral update for you. And I'm just going to highlight some of those key moments over the last 3 months, which has been an incredibly busy period for myself, but also for the Combined County Authority as we're delivering projects and investments across the region. And when you look at the agenda, both from March, when we last met, and indeed today, you will see some of that significant investment that we are approving and getting out of the door. Now, I visited a number of community projects awarded for money from my Community Development Fund. As you will know, we agreed a £3 million pot distributed across 10 areas within our region that were chosen on the basis of some of the challenges that they have in those areas. So very much targeted funding, which is going into locally led initiatives that I think will have real impact on those communities. I also had the privilege of being part of the judging panel for Sustainable Futures at Nottingham College. It's a sort of Dragon's Den style event where the students all pitched their ideas on how to contribute to a sustainable future. I found this to be incredibly inspiring, gives us real hope for all of us that our next generation are thinking about these things and coming up with some great ideas. And young people are always a real focus for me. I hope that you've noticed in this region. So it was great to meet some of the young people on our Youth Guarantee Trailblazer, again at Nottingham College. And I spoke to some of those students who have come on leaps and bounds thanks to that support. I look forward to visiting again and see how they progress in their studies. But ultimately, we are getting some of those young people who are not in employment, education or training into voluntary work, back into employment, back into education and training opportunities. That is a significant change in life for those young people. We've also been doing a lot of work around raising the region's profile nationally and internationally with businesses and investors by attending MIPIM and more recently at UK Reef. And it was a real delight to have all of the constituent councils, the leaders in place, and I think we presented ourselves as a unified, combined authority focused on doing the right things for our residents and bringing investment in. And we've had some fantastic feedback from that, particularly when we launched our plans for the Trent Sports District with partners from Nottingham Forest and Trentbridge and Rushcliffe Borough Council. And on the other side of the Trent Arc, at the end of April, here in Derby, we officially launched Team Derby, an incredibly important part of our strategic plan to ensure that investments going into the city are felt by the residents of the city and beyond. And as the Chancellor had backed Team Derby right from the very beginning in her autumn statement, and then again earlier in this year with a £10 million fund to help us deliver it, it was only fair that we invited her to come along to the launch. So it was wonderful to welcome Rachel Reeves to the Museum of Making to hear all about the plans for regeneration in the area and for Team Derby. We're also working on building the homes that we need. And you will have seen the money that has been approved on the Brownfield Housing Fund. And I visited a number of sites over the last few months, including the Nottingham War Rooms, which has been funded through that Brownfield Housing Fund. It's a deal which will deliver over 100 new homes, affordable social housing provision, which is absolutely fantastic for Nottingham. And we also signed off the deal with Homes England for the redevelopment of the Broadmarsh site in Nottingham. It's also been a very busy period for our work on the visitor economy. I visited the Beeston Film Festival, the Nottinghamshire County Show, Cork Abbey, Thornbridge Estate, the Great Central Railways in Rushcliffe, and I'm always astounded at how much we have to offer here in the region when it comes to great days out and places to visit. And there will be much more to come over the next few weeks to encourage people to make the most of the government's announcement that will allow people, particularly families with children, to get around our region and experience some of those offers and days out. On the 1st of May, I crossed the finishing line at the Crescent in Buxton when I completed the loop. Over 150 miles walked around the region in a year, and I'd like to thank everyone who joined me on a leg of that journey. I got to meet some really fantastic people along the way, and I'm already being asked by people, how can they do the loop? So people are approaching us, writing to us saying, can we have the coordinates and the mapping? Because it's inspired people to challenge themselves and get out there and see our region by walking it. And so I'm looking at all of you as board members and laying down a challenge if you'd like also to go and do a bit of the loop and perhaps tell me how you get on. Just a couple of weeks ago, we moved into our new offices for the Combined Authority in Chesterfield, and we now have our staff working on and using the High Street on Vicar Lane. When I talk about inclusive growth, I think this is a great example of it, because whilst, of course, we want to put investment and support into our cities and right across our region, by locating in Chesterfield, we are bringing our staff in there on a regular basis into the heart of the community, and they're under strict instructions from me to make sure they go out and spend their money in the shops, in the tea rooms, in the cafes, and in anything else they possibly can to help bring some of that regeneration and growth into Chesterfield. So it's been wonderful to be able to base ourselves in those new offices, and I'm looking forward to all of you getting an opportunity to come and visit us there as we finish the development of the office space, and we'll be able to hold more of our meetings in that space too. I'm very happy to take any questions or comments on my Mayor's report, but I will leave it there for now. Okay, thank you very much. Let's move on then to membership of the Combined County Authority. So I'm going to hand over to Stella Bacon, who's our General Counsel, who is sitting in for Sanjeev today.
Thank you. This is a standard annual report that sets out the membership of the Combined County Board, both constituent and non-constituent members, and the thematic committees that sit beyond that. The appointments are set out on page 18 to 21. There is just one update in relation to skills and employment that currently lists Councillor Graves as the deputy, and that will now be Councillor Justice. Other than that, everything is as published in the report.
Great. Yes, Councillor Khan.
Thank you. Just one, slight amendment on the appointment of the Transport and Digital Connectivity Committee on page 18. It should be Councillor David Mellon as the members. So Councillor Patience Ifedora and Councillor Mellon. Councillor Cora Jenkins is a sub. Sorry, it's just the other way around.
Okay, thank you for that. We can make that amendment. So we're happy. Can I just get approval that we're happy to agree this paper? Thank you. On that basis, can I therefore welcome our new appointee, Parish Patel, who is representing the employees and trade union place within on our board, and I'm sure you'll get an opportunity to meet more of the members over some more informal time a little bit later. Thank you. Okay. let's move on then to membership of the East Midlands Combined County Authority Regulatory Committee. Stella, please.
So this relates to our overview and scrutiny and audit and governance committees and the memberships of at page 25 and 26 accordingly. Page 25 is the overview and scrutiny, members and substitutes, and page 26 relates to audit and governance committee.
Okay, thank you. Again, the recommendations as they are, note the different appointments of members and substitute member nominations for overview and scrutiny and for audit and governance. You're happy to approve those? Yep, great, thank you very much. Let's move on then to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee Annual Report. Michael, you are going to present on behalf of Councillor Chris Poulter, aren't you? I understand he's not available today.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for the invitation to present the report. This is the second Overview and Scrutiny report, providing a factual overview of the committee's activity over the last year. Within it is a step change in approach, both in the function of scrutiny at EMCCA and in the topics that it focuses on. In terms of the function, we're striving to meet what's called the Ministry's scrutiny protocol, which is made up of something like 18 principles that set out a kind of benchmark for scrutiny in combined authorities. And that has driven the nature of how we approach scrutiny here at EMCCA. So, for example, we've had 2 mayoral question and answer sessions, which have gone very well, I hope, Mayor. We focus now a lot more on what's called early pre-decision scrutiny, which is that when scrutiny get involved a lot more in advance of a report coming to yourselves. So that scrutiny have been involved in shaping that report rather than having scrutinised it at the very last minute when, frankly, there's little opportunity to change it. We've also introduced an emerging programme of briefings in advance of scrutiny meetings so that members are better informed, which leads to better scrutiny in the meeting itself. We've been core at every meeting, which is a good result, obviously, but always a difficult thing to do. We also hold pre-meeting workshops to develop key lines of inquiry so that our meetings are a lot more focused and business-like, and they've certainly been delivering in terms of the quality of scrutiny that happens at the meetings themselves. And finally, we've launched a rapporteurs scheme, which all sounds very, very posh, but it's essentially a means by which the committee can collectively build its information and its knowledge base, where individual members sit on observe the various committee meetings and report back to the committee, so that we build not only individuals' expertise in certain areas, but also a collective knowledge base. And just finally, looking forward, we've got in a few weeks' time, we have a workshop to develop the new forward plan for the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, a workshop with officers and members in the spirit of working together on scrutiny rather than it being done to officers, which is often a risk. I've built in more capacity for scrutiny because there's such a lot going on in EMCCA. So I've converted informal meetings to formal meetings, and we'll have briefings and training outside of the meetings, the calendarised meetings. And of course, the big thing ahead of us is the impact of the English devolution legislation and local government review, and this year is going to be definitely preparing for that, which will start to kick in for us in 2027-28. I'll welcome any questions.
Thank you, Michael. Questions, comments? We're all content. Yes, Kath.
I thought it was a good report, but I just wanted to know about, the task and finish groups, and were they successful, and I wasn't sure that we'd heard much about the task and finish groups.
So we set off our first task and finish group in the new year, and it has yet to report. And that task and finish group was around the arrangements for data management across the region, because without sharing data amongst ourselves and planning for, again, the changes that are going to happen, it's the very basis of scrutiny, let alone everything else we do. So that will report back in due course.
David?
I hesitate to ask this, but I fully appreciate the need for scrutiny and the legal need for scrutiny, but does scrutiny ever examine its own navel and think, is it being a brake on decision making? Is it actually having a positive effect rather than negative?
Yes. Part of what I do is to make sure that we measure the impact of scrutiny. And that can be through recommendations, formal recommendations to the board or to other committees, or through a more kind of organic engagement in the development of strategies and projects and plans, and also recording that impact as well. And of course, the impacts, you'll have a short-term impact. Yes, the committee has accepted that recommendation, but also we need to make sure that actually that recommendation has led to improvement further down the line. So given our newness, we've yet to build that kind of data set, but it is there. It will build up. I hope next year the annual report will contain a bit more detail about that, about our impact.
Just that I'm ever conscious of the ever-increasing layers of governance within an organisation like this, and you get to the point, if you're not careful, where you just reach stasis, where you can't make a decision because there are so many layers to go through. So as long as scrutiny is aware, that's the start of a 10.
I we shouldn't be a brake, we should be a facilitating medium, and part of our risk management approach. Sorry, that members that we identify issues early on in the process rather than right at the very end when it's too late.
Stephen, yes.
Thank you, Mayor. I think from what I've seen of the reports, I think there's a lot of good work that's happened there, and commend that. I think it would be good to see, as we move into the forward plan, some more around some of the skills and employment area. I know there's been a lot of focus on finances and transport, and I think that's right. But moving forward with some of the challenges we have, as you've mentioned, it would be good to see more around how that's progressing so we can see the progress on that.
I agree, and I'm confident that there will be scrutiny of skills as an area in the coming year. You're pressing the button wrongly. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much, Michael. Can I therefore ask that you, I don't think there's an approval, it was just simply to consider and comment, so I think we're happy to do that. Great. Thank you, Michael. Can I now invite our independent chair, Shail Shah, chair of the Audit and Governance Committee, to introduce the annual report for audit and governance. Shah.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So as Mayor Clare said, I'm Shail Shah. I'm the independent chair of this Audit and Governance Committee. EMCCA's got two regulatory committees. We've just heard about the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and Audit and Governance is the other regulatory committee. This is actually our second annual report, but it actually only covers the first full year, because the first year we were only established in September. When I joined EMCCA, we had about 18 or 20 people. I think we now got about 200, 300 people. So, we're sort of moving on. We still haven't got a sort of full program, which has been audited yet. We're sort of building on what we did in the first year. So the first year was about setting up processes, systems. Second year, we're building on it. And then we carry on now, as we end up with more functions and a bigger, wider audit program. So my report gives an overview of the committee's activity. Essentially what we do is we give assurance to the board, to yourselves, about what checks and balances we have, what on our processes and systems, what are we doing to sort of protect the public purse? As I said, in the first year, we set up the processes and systems. Second year, sort of building on it. Some of the key highlights that we did in this last year was we approved the 23-24 and 24-25 accounts. We had an unqualified opinion from our external auditors, Mazars, on the 24-25 accounts. We've begun to receive reports from our internal auditors, a CMAP. We expect to receive their head of internal audit opinion next month at our July audit committee. And based on the work that they've done, I understand it's going to be like a positive opinion. We've also started looking at all the strategies and policies of some of the key strategies that EMCCA have. So like treasury management strategy, the risk management strategy, procurement. So we review all that, we comment on that, we give observations on that. And again, like Michael said earlier, hopefully to feed into it so we get a better product at the end of it all. We've reviewed the Officers' Code of Conduct and also EMCCA's approach to member complaints. And also in terms of the Constitution, as the Constitution is developing, as EMCCA's growing, I chair a small working group of our members on reviewing and updating our Constitution as it goes forward. And I think that's sort of in a nutshell, some of the details actually in the report. All our meetings are obviously public and the reports are published as well. So happy to have any comments, observations, anything else.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shah. Any comments or questions on the report? Can I thank you very much for your work, both of you, over the year, and please convey our thanks to Councillor Poulter as well. And thank you very much, and we look forward to seeing you in future.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we're moving now on to item 10, which is the Transport Investment Programme allocations. And I'm going to invite Alex Linton, who's the Head of Transport Investment, to come and introduce the report, which sets out the Transport Investment Programme allocations of almost £300 million for the period from 2026-27 to 2028-29. Alex, over to you.
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning, everybody. The paper today details the second stage of the allocation setting for the Regional Transport Investment Programme, which is funded through the Merrill Transport Fund, the Department for Transport's regional settlement that covers all the local transport needs for the region. The paper's asking Board's approval of the named allocations that are detailed in the papers, subject to each of those completing the relevant single assurance framework process. This paper is a culmination of a comprehensive and collaborative process which started back in September, overseen by Transport and Digital Connectivity Committee, and where EMCCA and the 4 constituent authorities have worked together to create the process and build the options and then these final proposals in this programme. Previously, we presented to Board in March this year with the first phase of allocations, where Board approved £470 million worth of investments over the next 3 years, which are focused primarily around the immediate operational needs of the network and some of the named more urgent schemes where decisions needed to be made quite quickly in order to enable those schemes to progress. This second phase has considered the remaining funding that is available to us over that same 3-year period, the large range of options that have been submitted and proposals put forward for ways in which that funding could be used. We've grouped them into 4 categories within the paper. That's structured around the way that the funding that we're using has been structured and to enable us to make sure we are aligning with the expectations of the Department for Transport and that funding stream. So the first block, which is referenced in paragraph 3.1 of the report, is just over £22 million worth of revenue funding. This continues the principle which we established in the first phase, the paper approved in March, which is using the revenue funding in these early years to develop the pipeline of the strategic transformational capital investments to be delivered in the latter half of the programme, so years 4, 5 and 6. That proposal was based on 2 principles. One, that we didn't have a deeply established pipeline of ready-to-go schemes, but also the capital allocation across the programme increases significantly in years 4, 5 and 6. So the allocation this year is circa £200 million. In year 6, it's nearer to 440. So there's a huge opportunity for larger scale capital investment in the back end of the programme. The second block of allocation proposed in paragraph 3.3 is around active travel capital. Previously, capital funding for active travel was granted to us by Active Travel England. That's now been subsumed into this allocation. What we've done, though, is a significant step up in terms of the scale of allocation that we're looking to use for active travel capital. It's 3.8 million per year has been provided by Active Travel England into the pot. We're looking at a total of £42 million over the next 3 years. This is putting in walking, wheeling and cycling infrastructure improvements and additions across the whole region. The third block, and in this particular paper, the most significant in terms of scale, is for integrated passenger transport. We had previously agreed a minimum level of £21 million per year in this 3-year period. That was never intended to be the actual amount that we were investing there. We were always clear that we would expect to invest significantly more than that in passenger transport. So the aggregated value of the proposals in the paper today is £142 million, and that's paragraph 3.4. Sorry if I hadn't mentioned that. This is a selection of customer-facing improvements, so improved passenger facilities, whether that's at stops or interchanges, improved information, so real-time information across the network, electrification of fleets and depots to enable us to continue the progression to cleaner public transport facilities, and a number of network improvements, whether that is what's been traditionally called the pinch point programme, where operators make us aware of areas of the network where there is difficulty for bus services to run effectively. It does need to be noted that this is capital-only investment. The revenue funding for delivery of services and ticketing schemes is outside of the Merrill Transport Fund allocation and is managed separately to the process in this report. The fourth block, paragraph 3.8, this is where we've looked at the remaining funding and the large volume of remaining options that were available for us once we'd covered those previous 3 blocks. The proposals that we've come forward are a mix that have been chosen specifically to ensure we're covering across the range of the different objectives that are coming through the emerging Merrill Transport Plan post-consultation period, which was concluded earlier this year. So that includes things such as, again, an emergency scheme where there's a bridge that's at risk of failure and needs to be dealt with, continuing to expand the RIDE digital app for transport planning. In addition to the 4 blocks of allocations that we are requesting approval for, we're also introducing a couple of principles around how the programme is going to be managed on an ongoing basis. The first of those is around over-programming. Now, at the moment, the allocations are all within the level of funding that we have available to us within 3 years, but it is a commonly applied programme management approach where you would look to commit or to allocate beyond that level of funding, taking into account the large scale of development that a number of these schemes need to go through and the continual evolution of schemes as and when they do get on the ground. So within this, we are proposing that we will use that over-programming principle as and when there is a particular need, a valid need to do so. So it's not a blanket over-programming, we'll just put more schemes in, but it will allow us to address changing needs. So for example, since this paper was first taken through to Transport Committee in April, the need around the Trent Sports Quarter has increased quite a bit, the speed and the urgency with which that is evolving. So it may well be that something comes out of that we would then look to use the over-programming facility for. Or alternatively around M1 Junction 30, there's a number of congestion and growth restricting issues. Again, there's no specific request today, but they're just examples of the kind of area where we may look and go, right, there's a particular need that would justify use of the over-programming facility. The other principle that we are raising, or not principle, just a risk to note, to recognise in the paper, is the rapidly increasing risk of inflation. Again, since the paper was first put through to Transport Committee in April, the situation with regards international geopolitical situation and the impact that's having on costs has obviously changed quite significantly. As schemes are getting developed, as schemes get into delivery, it is likely that those scheme costs, compared to what they're currently proposed at, could increase. And so it's just recognising the fact that we will need to adapt and respond to that as the programme evolves. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Questions, comments? It really is a significant sum of money for investment. Councillor Barton, as Chair of the Transport Committee.
So Yeah, it is a significant amount of money, and I'd like to thank yourself, but I'd really like to thank all the officers who's put all this together. There's a tremendous amount of work gone into it. So I'd like to thank yourself and all the rest of the officers that's been involved with this. It's fantastic. And all the relevant councils, officers who I know has worked quite closely with you and the team. So thanks to everybody for doing this. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Barton. Any other questions or comments? Yes, Councillor Peatfield.
Thank you. Yeah, very, very welcome investment. Very much appreciated. I just wanted to highlight the proposed allocation for Darley Abbey Mills Bridge. You may have seen the news last week that the bridge is in absolute dire peril now. Obviously, we've been working for the last 6 months to try and find a solution to this issue, but it's come to a head now. It's extremely dangerous and in danger of washing down the river any moment. So this is very timely and very grateful, and hopefully it can be expedited over to us as quickly as possible. Thank you.
I'm sure that point has been noted. Yes, Councillor Reid.
Yeah, just from Derbyshire's perspective, I think, again, broadly, this is very, very welcome. There's a lot of infrastructure and a lot of investment coming in, and we're really appreciative of, and it's good works. I want to highlight the Mini Switzerland scheme, and looking forward to seeing the success of that, and how that plays out, to see whether that can go on more. A couple things, obviously, with a very rural transport, hopefully that the Mini Switzerland could roll out with that, because they're recognising rising costs and all sorts of things. There's a problem in rural areas, which I know is shared across the piece, so the support there is helpful. The only question I would say on this was, I know there's 1 million allocated on the strategic rail development in 27-28, but given the timeline and scheme, my question is not a challenge, but is that a little too late, and can some of that be brought forward earlier in order to allow some of that strategic stuff to happen sooner, and get the ball rolling?
Do you want to pick up, Alex?
Across the 2 phases of the programme, there is a strategic rail allocation for each year. So 27-28 isn't the first, there is an allocation this year as well.
Yeah, and I do think the Mini Switzerland, we may have to come up with another name for it, because it's confusing the life out of lots of people who are wondering why Switzerland has suddenly relocated into Derbyshire. However, what it is a national pilot for rural transport that we are partnering with government, and we're very keen to make sure that it is a success, because that will determine what government does in rural areas, and also how we operate transport across other parts of our rural region. Councillor McEwen.
Thanks, Mayor. I think, again, I welcome, like others have done, the Mini Switzerland, or the Improving Hope Valley sort of project, if we're looking for alternative names for it. I think the important bit for me is not only sort of saying that as a government trailblazer in a sense, but also then what we do around it, because if that doesn't connect to anything else that's happening, then we might well have wonderful journeys within the Hope Valley, but if it doesn't connect to anything else, then it's not going to be as much use to anything. I think, whilst I welcome the comments around sort of additional investment around sort of the strategic rail bit, I think one bit that we do need to have a little bit of attention on in terms of rail is that accessibility element. I know there's a number of schemes locally, and the nearest one to me at Chinley Station, where because we haven't quite got a partner at the moment, it's not been able to progress any further. And I think there's probably a need to look across the region at those similar type of schemes where there's need of a partner for them to be able to develop, and how we can include those within the investment plans. Thanks.
Thank you. In addition to the named rail allocations within the programme, we've also proposed a rural accessibility programme level allocation. Now, there's no detailed definition to that yet. The intention behind it, though, was exactly the kind of situation you've talked about, is ensuring that those rural communities have improved access to public transport, whatever that may mean. And that may be around some of the train stations, it may mean around the bus infrastructure, but we will be working as a collective group to refine what the options are and progress scheme development under that area.
Thank you. Councillor Khan.
Yeah, only comment from me is we need close collaboration with the local authorities to make this work, because of cross-border kind of transport and travel and stuff. So I think it's just making sure that I know we're working well on the transport committee, but I think we need to do more, because I know the next item talks about the visitor economy and stuff, but I think local people within the region need to make sure they're going around and it's easy and efficient to do. And at the moment, I know some parts of the region are really a struggle to get around on public transport.
Yeah, I agree with that. Alex?
With a number of the allocations in there, we are creating those working groups. So, for example, there's a working group looking at active travel behaviour change at the moment, which does involve all of the authorities. So we are making sure that those allocations aren't being viewed in isolation of one particular authority. And as you say, where there's cross-border issues, which will happen an awful lot within this programme, we are making sure that all the relevant authorities are part of the planning and the development of those allocations.
Yes, Councillor Peacock.
Thank you, Mayor. And yes, a welcome report. I just want to make one point really that I think we've talked about rural areas, and that is a real problem. The publication earlier this month of Alan Milburn's report into the scale of economic inactivity for young people has been rightly trumped and discussed, and we look forward to the recommendations from that report coming out in September. But one of the key factors for people, for young people aged 18 to 25, not in employment, education or training, is actually about where they live and their accessibility to educational opportunities and employment opportunities. And I think we just need to be wary of that report coming out and the recommendations coming through from that. And that we can use maybe some of this money to address some of those problems in the East Midlands.
Okay, thank you. If there's no other questions or comments, can I ask, therefore, that you're happy to approve this Transport Investment Programme allocation and endorse the recommendations of the committee to communicate with the relevant district borough councils as well about investments in their area? Happy? Great. Wonderful. Thank you very much. Always the best part of the job, getting money out of the door, isn't it? Okay, so on to the next item, number 11, establishment of the Visit East Midlands Advisory Board. And I'm going to invite Alison Clark, who's our Director of Culture, Visitor Economy and Sport, to introduce the report, which is seeking board approval for the creation of the Visit East Midlands Advisory Board within the EMCCA's governance framework. And she will set this out as the starting point. Over to you, Alison.
Yes, thank you. So this paper sets out the case for a new advisory board. But also
Alison, you need this. That's it.
Okay, right. So this paper sets out the case for a new advisory board, but it also marks a key moment in establishing Visit East Midlands and in how we position the visitor economy as one of our high growth sectors. This is the first of two papers that will come before the board today and next month. So today's paper focuses on the governance, putting in place the structures needed to operate a coherent regional system. A second paper next month will bring forward the visitor economy framework, which will set out the pathway to delivering the £1 billion growth target, which has been set out in the East Midlands Growth Plan. And the context for both papers is really clear. In 2023, the visitor sector contributed over £5 billion in GVA, supported more than 50,000 jobs, and attracted 76 million visitors. We've got globally recognised assets, the First National Park, culture, sporting, and also heritage, and two cities which are driving innovation, business tourism, and creativity. But despite those strengths, we are not yet converting this to the value in the way we should be. So the level of this ambition around the £1 billion growth target requires a different way of working, more coordinated, more strategic, and also operating at the scale of this region. This paper therefore sets out one of the key building blocks required, the establishment of the Visit East Midlands Advisory Board. This will form part of EMCCA's governance framework, and it will sit alongside the business, the innovation, and the green growth boards. Its role is clear. It will provide independent, sector-led expertise to offer insight and constructive challenge, and also to strengthen some key alignments with national policy, funding and investment. And it's important to be clear that this is only an advisory body and all accountability sits with this board in line with EMCCA's constitution. So the recommendations are clear. To approve the establishment of the board, of the Visit East Midlands Advisory Board as a non-statutory, non-executive body, to approve the terms of reference, to approve the nine first appointments to the board, to delegate authority to the Mayor to make further appointments, and also to approve the amendment of EMCCA's constitution to formally incorporate the advisory board. And just a brief word on the way the appointments have been structured. Members have been selected on the basis of senior level expertise across the sector, leadership and influence at a regional, national or an international level, a track record in driving growth in this sector, and also the ability to think regionally, nationally and also internationally. So this initial board of 9 members provides a strong and a credible cross-section of this sector spanning culture, sport, tourism, business and also education. As I mentioned, the board is set to evolve with a capacity to expand up to 15 members to ensure the best balance, and further appointments will be made by the Mayor under delegated authority. So finally, this advisory board provides clear leadership. It ensures direct alignment with EMCCA's strategic priorities, and it also really crucially signals the importance of the visitor sector within the growth plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Alison. Any comments or questions on this? Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Chair. Just really quickly, will there be sort of some review that will come back to the board on a regular basis with this, or an annual sort of thing? Because I think I'm really excited to see where this goes, but just was querying as to how we see the updates.
Yeah. Do you want to pick up, Alison?
Yes, so the board will be reviewed annually.
So we'll look at the board, but also the work that is being done, because as you know, this is only part of the structure. So this is a strategic board. There'll be something a bit more operational, and then we'll have a wider network which will engage with the hospitality, visitor economy sectors right across the region as well. And so we can therefore bring back updates on the work of all of that. Any other comments or questions? No? In which case, can I ask then, you're happy to approve the establishment of the Visit East Midlands Board and the terms of reference, including the appointment arrangements for the chair. I think, as I've said at the moment, I will be the chair of that board, but it's not my plan to do it on a long-term basis. I'm quite keen to get it up and running, particularly as a number of those members don't necessarily know each other. And I think it's a good starting point, and then I'll review after that. The appointments that we've got so far, I'd like you to therefore not just approve the current appointments, the 9 people on our list, but delegate authority to myself in consultation with the Chief Executive to approve further appointments onto that board up to the maximum of 15 people. You're happy to agree all of those? Wonderful. Thank you very much. We now move on to the Local Growth Fund Investment Plan endorsement. I'm going to invite Diana Stray, who is our Director of Economic Growth and Innovation, to introduce the report, which asks the board to review and approve the investment plan for the Local Growth Fund. You'll remember that we were allocated £107 million over a 4-year period, and Diana's going to talk us through that high-level set of principles. Diana.
Hi everybody, thank you for inviting me to speak today. So this paper is asking you to consider and approve how EMCCA will approach deploying the Local Growth Fund. So the paper sets out some principles, some intervention areas, the indicative allocations and the processes that we will use to deploy LGF. If you're in agreement with the approach set out today, we can submit this to government, sign an MOU, and we'll be able to draw down the 107 million over the next 4 years. So before I go into the overview of the intervention areas, I just want to give you a bit of context and talk you through the process that we've been through to get to these sets of interventions that are part of the report. So to unlock the 107 million, government asked us to submit an investment plan for local growth fund, and that it must deliver against the East Midlands Growth Plan, which you collectively signed off in November last year. So government gave us a theory of change and a set of outputs and outcomes that we needed to work within, and a focus. They said that this fund needed to focus on business support, infrastructure development and skills development. So that actually dovetailed quite nicely with our growth plan and our 3 pillars around enabling growth, of which business support and employment and skills are 2 of those, maximising our high impact sectors, and having a place-based regeneration and thriving communities approach. So there was a lot of working together with government, and we've been through a period with MHCLG of co-development of the investment plan and the intervention areas you're seeing today. So given that government had given us an approach to take, and that actually in working with investment committee and reporting to you in the past, we had decided not to do competitive calls for projects from within the region due to kind of the waste of resource that can often take. We took a commissioning approach to local growth fund. So we've been collaborating and co-designing these interventions that you've got in the paper with constituent authorities. We've briefed districts and boroughs. We've worked with the Innovation Advisory Board and the Business Advisory Board to test and develop these intervention areas that you've got in front of yourselves. We worked with them to do kind of a top-down review of the growth plan, looking at areas where funding isn't in place or there isn't enough funding to deliver the outcomes in the growth plan, and flagged those as kind of critical areas for intervention for the local growth fund. And we also asked constituent authorities to kind of feed upwards to us around what are your priorities, what are you seeing as gaps. So things like digital connectivity and thriving communities really came through those submissions as well, and have made kind of a rounded programme between us. So on the back of all of that kind of collaboration and coordination, we also worked with investment committee to identify a set of principles of which we would use to deploy the funding with. And I'll just draw your attention to those because I think they're important. They're on page 102. So one is around focus and prioritisation, and I've talked a little bit about how we've gone through that process to identify the intervention areas. But we also want to make sure that we leverage this funding. So wherever we can, we want to bring match funding into it, and also private sector investment to make sure that this money goes much further within our local economy. And although 107 million sounds like a lot, over 4 years, it isn't that much to cover this broad set of interventions. So we really want to see it as part of EMCCA's wider investment plan, and complementary to the employment skills programmes that we're already doing, for example, to investment zone funding. So where we can, we will harness these interventions with other EMCCA resources. I think the final point that I want to make in that is that we are taking an approach to delivery that means that delivery will be at the right level. So we are making sure that this programme has regional coherence. So for example, on employment and skills, we might say this is the way we want to do it as a region, but then we know delivery is best done at the local level. So we'll be looking to devolve the funding through grant funding agreements to our constituent authorities or districts and boroughs to do that work within their communities. On other areas, for example, an export programme, we might look to procure at regional level a private sector partner to deliver that, because that's the best way through. So throughout these interventions, we are looking at where is the best place for these to be delivered. And we've been working with the technical officer groups and kind of your colleagues in the constituent authorities, and there are examples now where Nottingham, for example, might be accountable body for a regional programme across the whole of the region as well. So we're really getting into partnership working as we're thinking about delivery going forward. So in the paper, it talks you through the proposed intervention areas. There are 5 areas that we're saying this 107 million should focus on. One is around the opportunity escalator and making sure that we've got the right employment and skills pathways for growth, looking at where we have got investment but where there might be gaps, particularly focusing on how we work with employers to maximise their investment into people who are in work but maybe need to have kind of a career pathway, and a focus on youth ambition and young people. Our second intervention area is around business growth and investment. And although this has some elements of around innovation into it, it's also really around how we get our SME base to grow. And given the current economic climate, this is something that Business Advisory Board was really keen on having early access to. So we are thinking about a business investment fund that helps businesses kind of make de-risks capital for them. So if they're going to buy a piece of kit but it's too risky to do so at the moment, how can we de-risk that decision for them to keep growth going? How do we help them be more resilient by looking at their energy efficiency? Can we get them less reliant on some kind of types of energy or more energy efficient so they're not hit by some of the crisis that we're seeing at the moment? In terms of cluster development and innovation, we're working with the Innovation Advisory Board and our universities to look at cluster development and where we need to support different clusters. So, for example, there is a Create Growth programme currently that happens in Derbyshire and Nottinghamshire. We're looking at turning that into a regional programme so that our creative and cultural industries get support going forward. One of the largest areas is strategic development because the majority of this money, particularly in the later years, is capital. So we're looking at how we can create new funding mechanisms to get public money into infrastructure projects and development projects, which de-risks the private sector and gets development moving in the area. Finally, an intervention area that we work quite hard to secure with government actually is one around thriving places, and making sure that this works for our economy in EMCCA, recognising the rural elements of it, the fact that we've got a mix of market towns as well as city centres, that we need to make sure that our communities feel and can see the benefit of this money as well. So there are a set of programmes, including digital connectivity, a rural development fund, community energy, and community development funding that we're saying we need to focus in around our places. So just in terms of next steps, this is year one of local growth fund. Even though we haven't got the money yet from government as yet, we are keen to get delivery in place. So we are asking that you as EMCCA board delegate authority to develop this programme and get projects into action to investment committee so that we can work much faster to get these projects mobilised rather than having to wait to come back in September and November for project approval from this board. So the paper details how that would work. We will take a programme of concept initiation documents to investment committee at the end of the month, and then individual project leads, whether that's a constituent authority or EMCCA, will develop those concept initiation documents into full business cases, which will then be signed off and into delivery. So we're hoping to get some of this on the ground, certainly 4 or 5 elements of the programme, as early as possible by the end of the summer. I'm happy to take any questions. That's a lot of information, so I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana. Questions, comments? Councillor Carr.
Yeah, thank you, Diana, for that. Just to say, as the chair of the investment committee, we always get, whenever we get money in from government, there's always really tight deadlines to really make them decisions. So I think it's really important as constituent authorities, we think about pipelines. So when government come calling that we've got something to go with, because that kind of is a struggle. I think we've got to also recognise that we've got to make sure once we're getting this money, we're able to deliver, because there might be regions that don't deliver and government could have extra money. So when we put forward plans, then let's make sure we've got confidence as constituent authorities that we can deliver them, or the private sector, they can be delivered. If not, there's no point just grasping the money and then nothing's delivered. We should learn from past examples from D2, N2 and others where money comes in, people think, great, I've got that money and I can roll it on year. That doesn't benefit anybody in the region, and we've been really clear at the investment committee. We're putting proposals forward, and we've got to make sure you've got confidence of them being delivered in the tight time frames they are. If not, then it might be that one you don't take, but just wait for the next one, because I think confidence and delivery is really important. And another theme that came out within the investment committee is it can't just be the investment committee looking at it on its own. You've got to think about what's housing. So if you're going to build something, well, how are people going to get there? So we've got to think about it's a big jigsaw and putting the puzzles together around transport, housing and the rest of them. So I think we've got to think big and collectively as well, and that might mean that not everyone gets everything straight away, but which one gives it the most, return, so we can get that confidence and that investment back in the region.
Thank you. David.
Thank you. Just picking up on some of what Negat was saying, there's lots of encouragement for me in this. One is we are really working at pace here, and I admire the work the officers have done to develop this quickly. There was a real timing challenge. The second is, as chair of an advisory board, it's encouraging to hear words being used that were used in the business advisory board. So we are being listened to, which is a really, really good thing. The third thing I'd say, which is a bit more of a challenge probably, is that it heightens the need, I think, for the various advisory boards and committees to talk to each other. Because it's all very well maybe business advisory boards speaking in isolation. It's a bit like the terminals at Heathrow, they don't really speak to each other. And I think business advisory board, for example, needs to know what investment committee is thinking about, what investments are being made, otherwise they feel like they're speaking to a vacuum, and similarly they need to know what is going on in innovation. So we need to find some way of knitting these various elements together to work more effectively, I think.
I think that is a very good point. I'm already reflecting on how that is done. Yes, Councillor Gilby.
Thank you. On a similar line to what David said about being listened to, one of the big concerns that the district and borough councils had across the region was that the end of the UK SPF funding meant that many good projects that had enabled individuals, communities and businesses to grow were having to come to an end. But I think in this report it shows that EMCCA have listened to those concerns, and a lot of what was delivered through UK SPF is embedded in this, and that will mean that it will go forward into the future. And I'm really pleased to see that the work that you did on inclusive growth with the Commission is incorporated into this as well, because I think colleagues from the voluntary and community sector will be very pleased to see that contributed to it. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Kath.
I really welcome the paper. I think I think the areas, the thematic approach is really valuable. I think particularly the private investment. I think actually this region hasn't been really good at attracting private investment, and in a way it is a different mindset. So this building, we couldn't just take out the university money to do it. We needed people to invest in it, and that took my team quite a long time to think about how would you do that. But I think if we can start to look at match funding with private investment as predicted in this paper, I think it's incredibly valuable. And I think that then I agree with David that link between investment board and the advisory board and the business board is probably the most valuable connection, because there are slightly different mindsets, and I think having the joined up thinking is really valuable.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor McKeown.
Thanks, Matt. I think for me, I think the important elements within this, I think it's good to see that digital connectivity has still been recognised, and I think it's a particular area that myself and Councillor Barton will need to make sure our committee is sort of grasping over the course of the next ones. We've got a great deal of focus on the transport stuff, but we need to have an equal focus on getting some of the digital connectivity, because there's still quite a few nut spots and still quite a few places across the patch where 4G is yet a dream, and we're talking about moving on to 6G, etc. I think there's a bit for me, probably, I think the comments around pipeline, I think it's not just an issue for the constituent authorities, I think it's an issue for all of us. And I think there are a number of those programmes that are coming through where we know if we can get it over the line, there's a big pot of investment potentially from the private sector coming through, but it just needs that little bit of help to get over the line. And I think including sort of some elements of that within this. I think particularly, as Councillor Gilby mentioned, sort of that development for the voluntary and community sector. And I think a little bit for me, I think I'd like to see just a little bit of emphasis around sort of cooperative options, because I think, you know, we were able through our UK SPF to do some work around supporting development of that, particularly in rural areas, and I think there's some great opportunities across the patch for us to be able to do more on that. Thanks.
Thank you. And I'll just pick up, I mean, as somebody who is around most parts of the region, I share the frustration of digital connectivity. So does everybody who's on a telephone call with me while I'm driving around the region or in the back of a car. It is massively frustrating, and I'm definitely championing that. On the broader point as well, I think you'll note in the papers that when we talk about the allocations or the opportunities in principle for community development, it does reference specifically some of the kind of social enterprises. But I agree with you, within that we are also interested in where cooperative models might be part of that too. Councillor Peacock.
Thank you, Chair. Again, the paper's to be welcomed. I think I just want to us to acknowledge really that there's an awful lot of work going on across all the councils in the East Midlands area. A lot of projects that are being developed and a lot of programmes that are being worked on by district councils and borough councils, city councils and county councils. A lot of those are under pressure currently, so there's an awful lot of projects in the process of coming to fruition, but they're under massive pressure financially to get those projects over the line. And I'm just wondering how much flexibility there would be within this to support some of those projects, which actually do meet the objectives of EMCCA, do meet the objectives of this funding, to make sure those projects where they need that bit extra funding just to get them over the line, that funding can come from EMCCA or can be considered to come from EMCCA.
Anything else you want to add, Diana?
Just two things really. One around kind of social enterprise cooperatives, as well as having the kind of community development element. We do see them as businesses, and there are outcomes in our business support for those types of businesses as well. So they will be able to access the Business Investment Fund and all of the business support that we're putting in place as well, because they are an important part of the ecosystem. And then just in terms of your point, Councillor, the idea is that we kind of put in place a regeneration and housing fund, which is there to gap fund commercially viable projects, and they would be coming from districts and boroughs, counties, cities, wherever they needed to come from. So if there is a commercially viable project that has a gap that needs some support, we're going to look at mixed funding models to help those projects over the line. So there should be provision in the local growth fund as well as our capital funding to do that kind of work. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, can I therefore ask for your approval on the recommendations as... Oh, sorry, Councillor Peatfield, I missed you there. Councillor Peatfield.
Thank you, Mayor. At the risk of sounding like a broken record, in order for us to be able to deliver at pace and speed for you, we have a significant resource issue. Our council, and I know I'm not the only one, and that resource is in regeneration, that lack of resource in regeneration in particular, but also in business growth. And if you require the projects to be put forward into the pipeline, we need extra resource to be able to do that, because our teams are capital funded by project, so therefore that means that they can't work on future projects until the funding comes in. So I know we've discussed this many times. This board approved £1 million pot to be put aside to help us with that resourcing, and it's still not been finalised what that would look like. So I will keep raising it until we start to see some of that resource support. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, Diana, if you want to come back in on that.
Yeah, thank you. Absolutely recognise that point. We are working with offices now to identify the projects that they want to call off that first call of the £1 million feasibility fund onto. So we're hoping the grant funding agreements will follow shortly. We have also put a provision in for a further £2 million of project feasibility funding into the local growth fund to acknowledge that a pipeline needs continual development. So hopefully that will be an ongoing process. And I just wanted to add that where we are working with constituent authorities to deliver, our intention is that we would
take the money from the programme to pay for the officers to support the delivery of that. So we're very conscious that the delivery issues aren't just at EMCCA level but at local level. So we will be doing all we can to make sure we can help in those areas.
Thank you. Therefore, can I just ask for your approval then of the recommendations as set out in the paper? You're happy to approve all of those? Thank you very much. We move on to the last item, which is transparent decision making. I hand over to Stella for this.
Thank you. This is a report that I believe you're all very familiar with and covers any mayoral decisions and officer decisions that have been published since the board last met. There are two mayoral decision notices, both which relate to the changes to the pipeline scheme for Brownfield Housing Fund, and there are two officer key decision notices. One is internal resourcing and the other is approval of ASF adult skills funds and free courses for free jobs, which is an annual decision that's taken.
Thank you. Any comments, questions? Can I therefore ask you to confirm or note those decisions that have already been taken? Yep. Thank you. That concludes our agenda today. A very efficient agenda today, despite some significant decisions that we have taken. And I look forward to seeing you at other meetings over the coming weeks and months. And back to the July meeting, which I'm not sure where it's being held, but we will see you at the July board. Thank you very much.
Lunch is 12:30.
Lunch will be shortly. Thank you.